Are you pulling the wool over your own eyes without realizing it? It's called unconscious self-deception because we're often unaware of it. And as we learned in our last video, we're fooling ourselves all the time. Have you ever wondered how your daily life, your decisions, and your actions are influenced by your unconscious mind? It's a question we don't often consider, yet the answer holds profound implications for us all. Because the fact is, our ego uses unconscious self-deception to throw up blinders and blind spots all the time. And for persons on a spiritual journey, unconscious self-deception is a real problem. For example, we also learned in our last video that people who have made some spiritual progress often develop an overinflated sense of their own accomplishments, leading to a sort of spiritual arrogance or spiritual pride, completely overlooking the extent to which their egos are actually ruling their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. The old expression is, pride before the fall. Just think of the large number of enlightened spiritual leaders who were eventually guilty of gross misconduct after they were blindsided by their egos. We may have made some real spiritual progress, and we might even think we've transcended the egoic sense of a separate self, but here's a warning. We always have to remain hypervigilant because the ego can sneak in the back door and be ruling the roost before we even know it. Which leads us to the question, how much of our reality is tainted by our own unconscious self-deception, and what role does our ego play in self-deception? The ego defines our self-identity. It influences our actions and our perceptions. It's like a filter coloring our experiences based on a personal story we tell ourselves about who we are and who we want to be. Have you ever considered how your ego uses self-deception to protect itself? It's an interesting topic, really. The ego's like a shield, always on guard, protecting our self-concept from perceived threats. And how does it do that? It uses unconscious defense mechanisms, such as denial and rationalization. With denial, we refuse to accept reality, or more accurately, the ego keeps us from even seeing or acknowledging reality. It's like a thick, opaque curtain, refusing to let in any aspect of reality that might disturb our ego's hold on us. On the other hand, rationalization is like a crafty storyteller, where we concoct logical-sounding excuses for our behavior, spinning narratives that help the ego maintain coherence and self-esteem. The ego uses these mechanisms to ward off uncomfortable truths that threaten its control, leading to self-deception. The irony is that while the ego is working tirelessly to protect itself from any perceived threats, it also constantly craves security and control, so it leads us into a labyrinth of self-deception, and this self-deception is a significant roadblock on our journey to self-awareness and spiritual growth. The ego has a lot of tools at its disposal and a lot of tricks up its sleeve to maintain its self-image and its hold on us. The ego is a master of distraction. It keeps us wound up, chasing our wants, or avoiding our fears, or ruminating on negative thoughts, or engaged in self-criticism, or wallowing in self-pity, or flying high, chasing our next ambition. I'm admittedly using the ego as a bit of a foil here, but it's like Pogo said, we've met the enemy and he is us. And in addition to denial and rationalization, the ego uses two other powerful tools to distort our reality and deceive us without us even knowing it. The first of these is unconscious confirmation bias, and it's extremely common. In fact, we're doing it all the time without realizing it. We're more likely to seek out and remember information that confirms our existing beliefs, while ignoring or misremembering information that contradicts them. That is, we look for, interpret, and remember information that supports our preconceptions, It's like having a personal editor who warps our perceptions of the world by only picking out the parts of the story that fit a pre-existing narrative. Confirmation bias is a powerful filter that's deeply embedded in our unconscious mind. It silently shapes our perceptions of reality by selectively highlighting information that supports our ego's preferred self-image, while conveniently pushing aside anything that contradicts it. When we encounter information that challenges our beliefs, it can be uncomfortable and it can even cause anxiety. But confirmation bias conveniently allows us to avoid this discomfort and sidestep any anxiety by dismissing or reinterpreting challenging information. These distortions can feel comforting as they uphold our self-image and shield us from uncomfortable truths, but they also prevent us from seeing ourselves clearly and objectively. Another tool the ego uses is selective memory. Our memory isn't a perfect record of the past, it's more like a story we tell ourselves, and the ego is a master storyteller, spinning tales that uphold our preferred self-concept. It's like having a personal historian who only remembers the good parts and forgets the rest. Selective memory helps the ego maintain its self-image by focusing on memories that reinforce its preferred narrative while minimizing or even forgetting those that challenge it. It's an unconscious process that shapes our self-perceptions and our actions. In essence, the ego uses self-deception to filter our perceptions and interpretations of reality, leading to a distorted understanding of our thoughts and our actions. It's a profound process that subtly shapes our lives, often without us even realizing it. But by understanding these mechanisms, we can begin to see through the distortions and uncover our true selves. Did you ever imagine that self-deception could hinder your spiritual growth? Craving control, security, and self-preservation, the ego has mastered the art of self-deception, casting a veil over our true selves. It uses self-deception to shield us from the discomfort of confronting our own flaws and inconsistencies. The problem is that such self-deceptions anchor us in old patterns and behaviors that stifle our spiritual growth. It's like being stuck in a revolving door going round and round but never really moving forward. We may find ourselves repeating the same mistakes or wrestling with the same inner conflicts, unable to break free. While it might offer temporary comfort, self-deception ultimately keeps us from seeing ourselves clearly and making necessary changes so we can grow. It prevents deeper exploration, keeping us stuck in the superficial layers of our being. By using unconscious denial, rationalization, biases, and selective memory, the ego maintains its control, trapping us in never-ending cycles of suffering. It's like stumbling around a funhouse of mirrors full of blinders and delusions and self-distortions and illusions, all driven by the ego's desire for safety and comfort. But the journey to personal growth and spiritual evolution is not about maintaining comfortable illusions. It's about seeking the truth. To truly grow, we must be willing to look behind the facade of the false self. We have to be willing to discard our masks and delve beneath the surface and explore our true selves beyond the ego. So how do we move beyond unconscious self-deception and deepen our spiritual journey? That's the topic of our next video, but it starts with being willing to recognize self-deception. We have to be willing to face uncomfortable truths, and we have to be willing to peer into our shadows. Being willing to recognize our own unconscious self-deception is a necessary step towards self-awareness and growth. It's about peeling back the layers of our unconscious and shining a light on the parts we've hidden away. It's about relaxing enough to allow unconscious formations to come to the surface so we can examine them in the light of day. When we confront our self-deceptions, it brings clarity. It reveals profound truths about ourselves and our reality that we've been masking with illusions, sometimes for years. Spiritual growth is about transcending our illusions and uncovering the true self, the inner source of inner wisdom, love, and compassion. It's about letting go of our egoic distortions and embracing the authenticity of the true self. It's about understanding that we're not just the roles we play, the things we own, or the goals we chase after. We're far more profound, far more interconnected. It's about leading a virtuous life and cultivating the wisdom we need to strip away our blinders and see beyond the egoic self. This is how we find our way out of the funhouse of mirrors and find true liberation and inner peace. Such a journey may be challenging, but it's also enlightening and deeply rewarding. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tell your friends about us and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video in this series where I'll share practical strategies for confronting and overcoming self-deception. In the meantime, be mindful, be strong, but also don't forget to relax and pay attention.